Okay, the good news for us is that this is our last lesson. The 4 lessons in this part represent the second part of Chapter 8 test. Chapter 8.8 is here because of a method called factoring by grouping. Because sometimes the typical method of factoring does not work, this section represents one moment where there are 4 terms. Because this number of terms, we can't use the 4 steps discussed, so instead we must use grouping to determine whether it can be factored. The first step in grouping is splitting the problem into 2 parts. Now, just like before, I'm going to separate this into skill sets, and you need to make sure you use these notes to make sure you understand the skill sets whenever it comes down to your work. So what happens is when you do this is you split it in front of the sign, and you pretty much write 9x to the third minus 4x squared, and then plus 7x minus 6. Pretty much just splitting it into 2 groups. Alright? So on B, again, split it in front of the sign, and you're left with 4x to the fourth plus 3x to the third, and then minus 8x squared plus 2x. So again, visually separating these 2 things so that I see it as 2 separate problems. What that's going to do for me later on is help me to organize a little bit better whenever I do my factoring. So again, split it in front of the halfway sign, and we end up with 5x to the third plus 9x squared, and then minus 2x minus 1. Again, that is the first step, which is to split it. I know that some of you are going to choose not to do that out loud, I guess I could say, because you don't want to do it on paper, but it is going to help you organize yourself a little bit better, because what you see now is actually 2 problems here, 2 problems here, and 2 problems there. Once you split the problem into groups, we still need to factor out the GCF. Let's look at that just to make sure we review it. It's kind of part of what we did on yesterday's lesson where we took the common number out. So again, on this question here, what we would do is split it down the middle, view it as 10x to the third plus 15x squared, and then plus 8x plus 12. You then look at 10 and 15, and you say, all right, 10 and 15, the biggest number I can divide is 5, and the most x's I can take off of this, because that's got 3 and that's got 2, is 2 of them. Keep in mind you take the lowest amount out of your x's. So 5x squared is what I take off. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Had 3 x's, took 2 off. 1's left. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Had 2 x's, took them off, and that is done. You can always connect it and always take this sign and connect it here. We're putting it back together. 8 and 12, the biggest number we can take out is 4. I can't take off an x because the 12 doesn't have an x, so I open up parentheses. 8 divided by 4 is 2. X comes down because I did not touch it, plus, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. And that is where we're going to stop for now. But again, that is the first 2 steps of factoring by grouping. Split it, and then GCF factor each of those 2 parts. Alright? Looking at B. Again, split first, so 8x to the fourth plus 6x to the third, and then plus 12x squared plus 9. 8 and 6, biggest number I can take out is 2, and because there are 3 x's here, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to open up parentheses, I can also take off 3 x's, so I can take off a 2 and 3 x's. 8 divided by 2 turns into 4. 4 x's taking off 3 leaves me 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 x's taking all of them off means that is gone. Again, copy that symbol here as it will be your habit. 12 and 9, the biggest number you can divide by is 3, but because, actually this should have an x. Sorry, write that on your notes there. That should have an x. So again, the biggest number I can take out is 3, and because both of these have an x, you can take an x off. Open your parentheses. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Had 2 x's, took 1 off. I'm left with 1. Copy the sign. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Had an x, took it off. It's gone. Now you might notice, and it says here in the end, we typically, whenever you can factor, we end up with the same thing on the inside. And part of my training allows me to trust this fact because I've done it enough. You will eventually learn to trust that whenever you factor and get 2x plus 3 here, that as long as you do your job, you're going to end up with 2x plus 3 here. You will learn to trust that whenever you do your job and get 4x plus 3 in this parentheses, that you're probably going to get 4x plus 3 in that parentheses. The reason you need to trust that is because there are problems like this, to where when you go to work it out, it'll make you think a little bit. So 15x to the third minus 12x squared is the first part. Negative 10x plus 8 is your second part. These 2 I can take off a 3. I can also take off 2 x's. I open my parentheses. That turns into 5 with an x minus 4 with nothing attached because I took off both x's. Again, copy this sign here because that's what you want to do. Whatever sign is here, put it there. 10 and 8 both divide by 2. Can't take off an x. Now here is where things get interesting, because you're going to want to put 5x plus 4, but you trust that it's supposed to be 5x minus 4, so you're going to learn to just pretty much take that and copy it. And here's the reason why. Negative 2 times a positive 5x is a negative 10. Negative 2 times a negative 4 is a positive 8. So it actually is the same. And again, you have to learn to trust that for yourself as you go through it. But again, that's what the next few days is for as we get ready for our test. Because we have the same factor in both parentheses, this actually represents another GCF that can be factored out. So let's look at 3 problems fully before moving on to your work. Again, you're going to use the rest of the hour to practice, and again the rest of the time before the test to practice and identify your weaknesses. And your focus for the next few days is to fix those weaknesses so you can do well on your test. So we're going to work this all the way through. First thing we do is split it. So 9x to the 4th plus 3x to the 3rd, and then plus 6x squared plus 2x. Second thing we're going to do is factor each part. I can take a 3 off of both of those. I can also take off 3 x's. Open your parentheses. 9 divided by 3 is 3. I had 4 x's, took 3 off. I'm left with none, or 1. Copy the sign. 3 divided by 3 is 1. X to the 3rd, x to the 3rd, gone. Copy the sign as we just said. 6 and 2 both can be divided by 2, and I can take off 1x because both of these have 1x. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Had 2 x's, took 1 off, I have 1 left. Copy the sign. 2 divided by 2 is 1. X is gone, and again you have the same thing. So now what you have is your GCF is that. That is what they have in common, so that is what we're going to take off, 3x plus 1. And the part that's left over is everything that is not 3x plus 1, which is 3x to the 3rd plus 2x. And that is a full factoring by grouping. So again, once you get the same thing in both parentheses, you simply take that part off and write everything else there. On your Math Excel, that skill is going to be the first skill you work on, because to me that is the hardest part. I think it's easy to split. I think that as long as you practice this skill, it's going to be easy enough to factor out the GCF, but it's going to be difficult for some of you to go from here to here, and so that is your first level of practice on your work, because I need to make sure you know how to take the 3x plus 1 off and then simply say, if I took that off, I'm left with 3x to the 3rd. If I take that off, I'm left with 2x, and then put those into parentheses. Alright? Second one, split 6x to the 3rd minus 4x squared plus 3x minus 2. Again, that split separates the problem like I need it to be. Here I can take off 2x squared. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Had 3 x's, took 2 off, I'm left with 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. All my x's are gone. Plus, here's the thing. I can't take anything out of 3 and 2. I also can't take off an x, but I need a number. Whenever you can't take off anything, that's when you want to put a 1 there. Alright? And again, trusting that this is going to be the same, just bring over your 3x minus 2. And again, what happens now is that this comes off. And whatever is not that is left over. So 2x squared and then plus 1 is what we end up with. That is it. Okay? Again, hopefully you've got your other factoring kind of under control, and you're starting to recognize that this test is not going to be so bad. Here we go. 14x to the 4th minus 10x to the 3rd, negative 21x squared plus 15x. Factoring this, the biggest number I can take off is 2 with 3 x's. That leaves me 7 with an x because I took off 3 of them. Minus 10 divided by 2 is 5. All my x's are gone. Copy the sign. 21 and 15 can both be divided by 3. I can also take off an x. Open your parentheses. 21 divided by 3 is 7, and again at that point I can just assume it's going to be the same, because it has to be the same in order to work. If these two don't match, you can't factor it. Then I take the 7x minus 5 off, and I am left with 2x to the 3rd minus 3x. So again, the rest of the day what you should be doing is working on this skill And again, for the rest of the period or the rest of the time up to Wednesday's test, you need to be making sure you're getting all of your mistakes out of your system so that you can do whatever is necessary to pass this test. Again, some of you need to pass this test to pass the class. I think I gave you your numbers, and if I did not give you the number that you need to pass, feel free to come and see me and I can talk to you about that. But just make sure you work as hard as you can because you need this stuff. All right. Other than that, good luck.